Good morning, everybody. My name is Zach Seidel. I'm Deputy Mayor Communications for Mayor Bass. We have the distinct honor of welcoming United States Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, joining us today in City Hall for this important climate and safety announcement. First, we're going to hear from Mayor Bass as she welcomes the Secretary to Los Angeles. We'll then hear from United States Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, followed by California Deputy Energy Secretary, LaQuinn Nguyen. After that, Mayor Bass will provide concluding remarks, and then we'll take questions, of which I'll call from the right. And with that, Mayor Bass.
Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here as we welcome Secretary Haaland of the Department of the Interior to Los Angeles. Secretary Haaland and I served together in Congress, and we worked very closely during the pandemic. I was chairing the Congressional Black Caucus, and Secretary Haaland had just made history as the first Native American woman to ever serve in Congress alongside Congresswoman Sharice Davis. And we are so proud when she was selected to be the first Native American in the President's cabinet serving as Secretary of the Interior. Earlier today, we met with leaders and stakeholders of the Native American community in our region, and I'll have more to say in a few minutes. But for now, I'm honored to introduce Secretary Deb Haaland to make an exciting announcement for the state of California.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Bear with me for 1 second. Thank you very much. Is it afternoon? Not quite, but good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. Today, we are here to highlight how President Biden's Investing in America agenda is creating jobs and advancing environmental justice by cleaning up legacy pollution sites across the country. We're grateful for the partnerships we have right here in California, and thank you to Mayor Bass for hosting us and for supporting these vital efforts. Millions of Americans, including many Californians, live within just 1 mile of an orphaned oil or gas well. These environmental hazards jeopardize public health and safety by contaminating groundwater, emitting methane, which adds to the climate crisis, and littering our landscapes with rusted and dangerous equipment. As I've traveled the country, I have seen firsthand how these wells threaten the clean air and clean water of current and future generations. These toxic sites pollute backyards, recreation areas, and community spaces, all places that we should expect to be safe in our own communities. Methane leaking from many of these unplugged wells is a serious safety hazard and a significant cause of climate change, being more than 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere. California alone has thousands of unplugged orphan wells, and during a visit to Los Angeles in 2021, I saw several orphan well sites and abandoned infrastructure and had the chance to meet with local community members, advocates, and elected leaders. One site I visited with an old and leaking infrastructure was actually located next to a field where children play baseball. While there, environmental justice advocates spoke about unknown impacts that this kind of abandoned infrastructure can cause. They shared about the legacy of young Latino children who went to school with tissues in their noses because nosebleeds from toxic air quality was a regular occurrence. These are the troubling realities that drive us to action and remind us how vital it is that we get this work done and that we do it quickly. Fortunately, thanks to President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, we now have historic resources, a total of $4.7 billion to clean up these sites while creating jobs and revitalizing local economies in the process. Our new Orphan Wells Program Office is stewarding this investment at the Interior Department, part of the largest ever in American history to address legacy pollution. This funding is broken up into a couple of different buckets. The first was initial grant funding, which many states have used to address these high-risk wells or to inventory and organize their efforts. The department has awarded $565 million in initial grant funding to 25 states, including $25 million to California, which has allowed the state to plug more than 150 wells. Today, we heard from the California Geologic Energy Management Division about how this funding has made a difference already and their plans for future funds. I want to thank the labor representatives and environmental justice advocates who contributed to this discussion. Another bucket of resources for states is through formula funding, which includes an overall $660 million for the first phase that is being released on a rolling basis this year. Today, I am thrilled to announce $35.2 million in formula funding for California, enabling the state to continue making progress in cleaning up potentially contaminated and dangerous orphaned oil and gas wells. The new funding will allow California to permanently plug and abandon over 200 more toxic orphaned wells. As part of the award, the state will also detect and measure methane emissions from orphaned oil and gas wells, screen for groundwater and surface water impacts, and prioritize cleaning up wells near disadvantaged communities. This analysis will be so important to helping us understand what the impacts are of this kind of abandoned infrastructure on our communities. That's what the President's Justice 40 initiative is all about, centering environmental justice and focusing resources on communities that have been historically marginalized by underinvestment and overburdened by pollution. This is a priority for the Biden-Harris administration and for me personally. I come from a community that suffers from the impacts of environmental injustice. The Pueblo of Laguna, my tribal community in New Mexico, continues to feel the devastating consequences of having had the nation's largest open-pit uranium mine, even though that mine was closed more than 40 years ago. Capping hazardous orphan wells and addressing legacy pollution across our country will have a profound impact on our environment, on our water quality, and the health and well-being of our communities. It also provides a historic opportunity for economic revitalization and the creation of good-paying union jobs as we begin these projects, something that is at the heart of the President's Investing in America agenda. In fact, since the enactment of the bipartisan infrastructure law, states have plugged more than 7,700 orphan wells and reduced more than 11,000 metric tons of potential methane emissions. California is one of the states that is leading the way in putting these new resources to work, because it's going to take all of us working together to ensure that we are making the kind of enduring impact that will last for generations to come. And that's why I promise, this is my last announcement today, we are also publishing final guidance for states to access yet another bucket of funding for orphan well cleanup program through matching grants. Through this next phase, the department will award up to $30 million each to states that commit to increase state spending on cleaning up orphan wells, allowing us to address more of these sites and create more jobs together. For too long, communities have been left behind as extractive industries have benefited. This funding gives us an opportunity to help right that injustice. Thank you all again for joining us, and thank you to the partners here that are helping us make transformational change for our country. With that, I will turn it over to California Deputy Secretary for Energy, Deputy Secretary Wynn. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Haaland. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank Secretary Haaland for inviting me to be here today. I'd also like to thank Mayor Bass for her welcome and also for the support from the city. Without them, this would not be possible. The partnerships with both the federal government and local governments has been really critical to all of our work, so looking forward to seeing that continue. I am just so excited to hear that California will be receiving additional funding that's very much needed, that will be critical for continuing our efforts to plug orphan wells as well as to remove that legacy pollution that they leave behind them. So last December, I had the opportunity to visit this area, and I visited a few oil and gas sites, and just a few miles from here, near St. James Park, there's actually it's a non-producing former oil production site, And while there, I had the opportunity to meet with a few community members, and they were kind enough to share their lived experiences with me. And just hearing about their experiences with the leaks, the smells, the alarms going off throughout the night, the health issues that were resulting from their experiences, it was really hard to listen to, really hard to understand, and just heartbreaking. But we're determined to make change. We're determined not to let that be their continued lived experience, and so we want to take action to change that. And so since then, using the previous funding from the Department of Interior that Secretary Haaland mentioned, as well as funding from Governor Newsom and the state legislature, we've started the work to plug 378 of the highest priority wells in California. And we fully understand that there's much more work that we need to do on orphan wells. We have thousands of orphan wells in California, and each well poses a risk to public health, safety, and the environment, as well as further contributes to climate change. So the funding that was announced today by Secretary Haaland, this will continue our momentum in plugging orphan wells in California, as well as remediating those sites and removing that legacy pollution. It will also make a meaningful, positive impact to our communities, as well as creating good jobs for people. So again, very, very grateful for the collaboration with both our federal and local partners, without whom this work would not be possible. Thank you.
Madam Secretary, Deputy Secretary, thank you so much for being here today. It is very exciting that we will be receiving additional funding. And let me just say that I think this is another example of how, when the public sector comes together, the federal government, the state government, the local government, that we can address some of the greatest problems that we experience in our state.